Hi, everybody. I'm Bryan Mudd, a fan of South Plains politics. Here's your talking points for this week. The number of Democrats running for president is shrinking. That only makes the stakes even higher for those coming to Texas this week. We'll have a preview. And the cost of doing business in Lubbock City and county government seems to be raising your taxes a little, although voters haven't been too happy about that. We'll talk about why.
From the studios of KMAC Television in Lubbock, your local election headquarters. This is Talking Points with Bryan Mudd.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Also this week, superpowers. Once again, we've had to watch as brave heroes known as first responders run towards someone intent on killing everyone he sees, this time in Odessa. 7 dead, the shooter dead, and once again, the rest of us left wondering how to keep this frightening garbage from happening again. And you know, the Odessa incident happening just hours after the first meeting of the governor's new Texas domestic terrorism task force. It was set up after the El Paso shooting and includes Lubbock District Attorney Sunshine Stanek. Their goal is to come up with ways to stop these terrible acts before they happen. Possible? Maybe, but you may need superpowers to really get that done. Or executive powers. The governor also handing down 8 executive orders this week, dealing mostly with the training and communication between law enforcement officials and schools and other agencies on how they deal with suspicious activity and major threat assessments. Bipartisan select committees have also been formed in the House and Senate to work on future legislation that might help. Lubbock's Charles Perry is a part of that. State Democrats say this is about better gun laws. They're trying to get the governor to go one step further and bring all lawmakers back to Austin now for a special emergency session of the legislature. In that, they'd like to see laws to ban high-capacity magazines and close background check and gun sale loopholes. And you know, that last part starts to hit home after what happened in Lubbock this week. Agents with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms leading a raid on a North Lubbock home. They believe the man who lived there may have ordered gun parts, assembled his own weapons, which is okay, but then sold one illegally to the Odessa man accused in last week's shootings. Not okay. And the Odessa shooter had already failed gun background checks because of problems with his mental health. And therein lies the rock and the hard place for state leaders. A lot of talk about safety, personal rights, and gun sale loopholes, but gun rights groups have already said in Texas, no changes to gun laws. Those advocates are generally Republicans, and they actually vote, unlike a lot of people. And remember, despite successes, things remain a bit tenuous for Republicans in the legislature, especially the House, where the recent controversy involving Speaker Dennis Bonnen and Lubbock's Dustin Burrows hasn't really helped. I thought Bud Kennedy from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram put it perfectly in this tweet, responding to a former lawmaker saying that gun grabbers will be met with fury in the next election. Kennedy reminds us that only 10% of all Texans vote in the Republican primary, so 5% plus 1 vote can swing the party. That's not a lot of people. That could affect everything. And how will they be affected by what happens next? And we're always happy to bring in Lubbock's State Senator Charles Perry. Good to see you again, my friend.
Good to be here.
What do you think of the governor's executive orders now? It always seems like those are a little bit limited just because basically they have to be.
Right. Yeah, I applaud the governor's initiative to want to jump out there and get ahead of some things. So on the actual detail of what he put out, not having time to study them, but they look like things that we've had some internal discussion. You know, there's suspicious people, and you got to be careful with that, with due process and things. But this guy in Odessa is a great example. He was known to be a problem and possible potential someone that could do what he did. So there's no consolidated database to have that reporting. So the local law enforcement might have been contacted, the FBI might have been talked to, 911 might have been contacted, but there was no way to coordinate those. So if you look into the heart of what that's going to is capturing those initial reports on people that potentially have the desire to do bad things. So I support the intent behind it, what the practical application, how that works out pragmatically. That's up to rules and stuff to be developed. So I thought they were reasonable discussion points. You know, we've been appointed, and I'm sure you want to know, the task force committee.
Sure.
It's our job to deliberate, have witnesses, have testimony, and go through and find solutions with all factors, responsible gun owners in that conversation, et cetera. So that's kind of where we'll move to. So I think he did a good job of laying out some big initiatives.
Yeah.
They're very specific, and they're more directed at DPS's role and at how do you capture someone that potentially has a problem ahead of them becoming a real problem.
And you mentioned it's the Senate Select Committee on Mass Violence Prevention. There's one in the House as well. We're very early in that process, but how will that work, or at least for what we know, and are there goals for this specifically?
So the goals will be, as if with any hearing or any testimony or any process we set up, is to get all the facts and all the data points and hear from people that lived it, you know, the victims, hear from people that have concerns about how we respond. So just try to build a coalition of support for things that make sense that we're not doing today, possibly, things that we can do without infringing on some law-abiding citizens' right to bear arms. I mean, that's in our DNA as a country, so it's those discussions that we haven't had. And to have a special session, as some of my colleagues are calling for, we don't have a discussion yet to have until we have testimony, and it's just the process. So I trust the process. The process will be serious deliberation, serious debate, internally and externally, and lots of people will have their input, and we will take that and run with it.
Yeah, and we've heard that a lot from Democrats here in the last week or so. We need to bring everybody back in for a special session, and we need to have movement on X and Y and Z. I don't see that there's compromises there to be made. It would be more or less a waste of time, it would seem to me like.
It'd be a waste of time, waste of state resources, and I don't want to make light of it. I understand they have concerns, and everybody wants to do something, and that doing something has large ramifications if you do it wrong. And so until you've had the process and the ability to go through X, Y, and Z to see what is the real data, you know, there's a lot of misinformation.
Sure.
All of these shootings are a little unique in their own rights, but yet have some common factors possibly. So we need to have those debates, and we need to hear from the FBI as the federal authorities and state. We need to hear from people as to where to move. And if we make decisions based on what we think we know, only to determine later we didn't know what we thought, we've got a mess and a problem. So I understand the desire to quote, run out there and do something on emotion. You know, policy shouldn't be made around emotion. Policy should be made around facts and data and research, and come to a solution that hopefully can help prevent something going forward like this again. But more importantly, the policy needs to fit in a sense of it works for the entire population of the state.
And we've talked this a little bit here. There is a political ramifications for this. We talk about doing background check loopholes. We hear even from some Republicans say there may be ways to make something happen good here. There are other Republicans or just law-abiding citizens, as you mentioned. It's like, I don't want any changes to gun laws, and they vote. So how do you juggle all of that?
This is probably, and I have had a lot of issues in my political tenure of 10 years now. I would say this is the one that probably has the most emotional attachment to it, with the most political downside on either side of the fence. If you do something, you're going to offend a large part of your Republican primary base because of principles involved of Second Amendment. But if you don't do anything, then you're going to offend some of what's referred to as the suburban woman that's concerned about children in their schools. All legitimate perspectives, but politically, this is one of those areas that you try to not make decisions around politics. We don't, but that's what makes it more important to have your facts before you make a policy, so that all of those concerns can be heard and hopefully craft something that works. But this is a tough issue politically. You've got one side screaming we got to take everything up and we got to tighten it up, and you've got the other side saying Second Amendment means everything to us. So where you can find common ground, I hope, is that there are already laws on the books that are not enforced. Many a situation, and I can give you some statistics for that, but one of them is since 94, 93, I believe 700,000 people have applied for a gun through a legitimate gun dealer, only to be denied because of something in their background. But yet, on that form, when you sign it and go in and do that, there's a perjury declaration that under the penalties of perjury. But we don't have resources on a federal level to go investigate and pursue those people. So had this individual in Midland failed the background check in 14, had some punishment or punitive enforcement attached to it, would he have been able to go out and get another gun? So it's that aspect of it. How do you make people aware of people that have trouble? And
Well, you're going to be talking about that a lot here
lot
in
of
the Select
policy.
Committee.
A lot of policy.
All right. Good luck with all that.
Well, I'm going to need it, but it's just it's sad we have to have a COPPA committee like this. That's the bigger discussion I think that we can't lose sight of. What does it say about our times we're actually having to have a mass, a committee that deals with mass violence like this? So, different issues, deeper issues, and we'll have some of those discussions. But it's a mental health issue, it's an awareness issue, it's a reporting issue. It's a Second Amendment issue. It wraps up at all of the things that we as Americans and citizens expect of our government, but at the same time, they don't expect too much government. So where do you find that balance? So,
you didn't know he was an expert juggler. He's going to have to be moving forward. State Senator Charles Perry, good to see you again.
Thank you for being here.
And talk to us on our KMAC News Facebook page about this week's poll question. Would you vote against an elected official specifically because of their stance on gun control laws? So is that topic that important to you? Get out and vote on Facebook and on everythinglubbock.com. Click on Talking Points and give us your opinion. Coming up, which Lubbock County Commissioner has already drawn a primary challenger? And Congress gets back to work this week.